How are you guys doing out there? Can you guys hear me? Just give me a heads up in the chat box if you guys can hear me. Great. And can you see my shared screen, Education for Golf? Great, perfect. We're going to wait a few more minutes just until people log on, and then we'll get ready here. But in the meantime, I guess, go ahead, and I usually do this. Where are you guys from? Type in the chat box where you guys are from. I'm from South Florida. Germany. Duke University. North Carolina. Mexico, okay. We're getting lots of different areas. I appreciate you guys stopping in. Tampa, not too far from me. I'm on the east coast of Florida. Hopefully your weather there is not too bad. South Carolina, Austria, whew. All right, who are golf fans out there? We got a big weekend this weekend for those that are actually golf fans and not just trained golfers, the Masters weekend. If you're a golf fan, type in who do you got for your winner? Who's your winner this weekend if you're a golf fan? Nobody typing in anything, huh? Maybe everybody just trains golfers. Tiger, of course. Why wouldn't you root for Tiger? You have to root for Tiger. Wolf, okay. That's a good one. I like that. Long ball hitter. All right, looks like we can probably get going here. Again, appreciate everybody for coming in. Usually these take about 30 minutes or so, but if we have a lot of questions and answers, it could take us a little bit longer. I'm gonna close these chat boxes for now. If you have any questions or comments while we're going, there's a question and answer section at the top. You can type in your question, answer. I might be able to get to it during the session. If not, I'll answer questions at the end of it. Or if you want to type something in the chat box, you can do that as well. In regards to the presentation, if you're registered, you'll have access, I believe, to download this presentation if you like. But if there's some confusion, just email me. I'll give you my email address at the very end, and you can just email me and I can give you a copy of the presentation and a video as well. But let's go ahead and get started. Obviously, we're talking about education for golf today. A little bit about myself is usually how I start off, personal experiences. I've been with Keiser for about 5 years now, a little over 5 years. Currently, my role is a human performance and education specialist. Prior to that, I was a strength and conditioning coach at the professional and collegiate level, working with all different types of athletes. And then along the way, I was a personal trainer. So I've worked with a younger population, I've worked with older population, and I've worked with athletes and pretty much everywhere in between. So if you have any questions in regards to the general markets, let me know and I can answer those as we go. Goals for the session, we want to know what the specific demands are for golf. We can make this interactive, like I said. Go ahead and type in any question that you have, or you can wait at the end. All right, so let's go for it. Keiser Education for Golf. Golf fitness and golf-specific training have gained enormous popularity in large part because leading tour professionals are discussing their training habits and seeing the benefits. So if you guys follow people on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., if you go to their page, they're going to have a lot of different exercises that they'll actually even show you guys in regards to what they're doing. And I think that's helped gain the popularity and the sort of the stigma of before, like 5, 10, 15 years ago, resistance type of training wasn't as popular as it is now, but I think that's a direct correlation between Tiger Woods and what he did, and it sort of made that popular for everybody else. But to improve our golf performance through training, the golfer must step outside the box and realize that simple traditional strength and conditioning will not be adequate to maximize performance. So It's not like you can just walk into a gym setting and then automatically you do some things from a strength standpoint and you're going to become a better golfer. You're going to get stronger, faster, quicker, more explosive. There's specific things that we can do to help that golfer achieve the goals that they're looking for. So that's what we're going to sort of go over today. Improving golf performance, the performance specialist must understand the movement and the physical capacities necessary to perform at the highest level. So not only do we want to understand the exercises that we should prescribe for those golfers, let's understand the movements that they're performing in their swing, and from a standpoint of what energy systems that they're getting their power from, etc. So to start off with that, let's go ahead and look into our primary energy systems that are used. And that is going to be the lactic anaerobic, another word for it, ATP, PC, and that's anything that's involving 0 to 10 seconds. And that's a high demand. So again, the other two energy systems are lactic anaerobic and then aerobic energy systems, but the primary one used is the alactic anaerobic, and that's 0 to 10 seconds. That's where we're talking about that powerful swing. Again, we think, our swing is going to last less than a second. This is one of the things that I think in previous years, a lot of people get confused in regards because they see people walking on the golf course, as you see in the picture, and they say, okay, well, what are we going to do to improve this golfer's conditioning? And they have them go run long distances. In my opinion, that's the last thing that I would do for a golfer. One, they're not runners, they're golfers. So I'm not going to train them from a running standpoint, and running is going to work more the aerobic capacity. I want my golfers to be powerful, explosive, and be able to generate those types of forces over and over again. And again, those things last under a second long. To discuss this a little bit further, let's break down like if you're playing 18 holes of golf, just even from a one-day standpoint, let's break it down into each segment. Okay, they get up, they warm up, etc. They do their driving range protocol, they do their putting. Their driving range is probably where they're getting the most swings at, obviously, over a repetitive nature. But then once they get on the first tee box, they're having most likely an explosive swing that's under 1 second. Usually you're paired up with another person and or two other people, depending on what level of play that you're playing at. And then if you are at the high school, collegiate, professional level, you're walking, right? You're not riding in a cart. So then you have to walk to your ball. So that might take up to 1 minute to 2 minutes to walk to your ball, but then you have to wait for other people to play as well. So it's not like you're having to use an energy system all at once. You're using that high explosive lactic anaerobic system. Then you're resting basically because you're walking, you're getting to your ball, you're waiting. You could be waiting up to 3 minutes before your next shot. And then you have another explosive type of shot. Depending on if you're playing a par 3, par 4, par 5, you might have 3 explosive shots into the green, and then you're lining up your putt. So the long story is you might be doing a lot of things from a max effort standpoint that are very short periods of time, and then you're going to be doing a lot of things that are just walking, general type of resting segments. So again, that's why that I wouldn't have a person that wants to be better at golf go run 3 miles, because they're never going to do that. Typically you're walking anywhere between 4 to 6 miles in your round. So you want to have the capacity to be able to walk that distance. But again, you're going to be stopping along the way to rest. So if you see some of the tour professionals out there now, they're highly in shape, but you also see some people that aren't in great shape that are still able to walk those 18 holes, and they're able to do it 4 rounds consecutively on a weekend. For our average day weekend warrior, same thing applies. A lot of times maybe they're walking or they have a push cart or they're in a golf cart. So again, the aerobic system is not really something that you need to be training. Let's go ahead and move on. So let's break down the segments into lower body. There's no doubt that a stronger lower body is vital for golfers, both in relation to the swing mechanics and speed, but also from an injury prevention standpoint. Various studies have shown that increased lower body strength and power have strong correlations to higher swing speed levels and improved performance. So everything works from the ground up, and that's in most typical athletics. Is we're able to get our power from the ground, and then that has to move up through the kinetic chain throughout our limbs. Of course, this is talking about golf. But if we don't have that stronger lower body, we're going to have problems potentially with injury standpoints, and or we're not going to be able to produce the power that we want to achieve to gain distance off the tee or on our next shot. These pictures here is Koepka, if you guys are familiar with some golfers, and then you have Rory McIlroy, obviously doing Bulgarian squats or doing lunges. Again, you could refer back to their pages. You're going to see a lot of exercises that they do at certain times of the year. But again, know that lower body is going to be a huge component of the golf swing. All right, so let's look at some corresponding exercises that go along with that. If you have the ability to have Keiser machines, you could utilize all the lower body pieces and feel safe that you can do so, because you can do those things not only at a slow speed. If you want to do hypertrophy training, you can do that. If you want to work absolute strength, you can do that as well. And of course, if you want to use power and speed, Keiser is the machines for you. If you're familiar with the functional trainer is the one that has the 2 arms on it. Different exercises that I've utilized with some clients are squat variations on the functional trainer. So you could use the light bar, put the light bar on there. You could do front squat, back squat, again, split squats. It's your imagination from that utilizing the functional trainer. I like doing hops, bounds, jumps, and obviously overspeed jumps as well, where the handles are up high and I can actually deload myself into a jump. So I'm just doing some overspeed training as well, trying to get that neuromuscular system to fire quickly and rapidly. We want to recruit the type 2B muscle fibers. And then obviously we want that rate coding as well. Traditional examples, if you don't have Keiser equipment, again, we go back to the squat variations, and I'm a big proponent of a squat and any type of athletic movement that I'm doing. Love my compound movements, but I change them. You know, it might be a front squat, it could be a goblet squat, sumo, Bulgarian, single leg squats. I prefer, if I don't know what the training age of a particular athlete is, I obviously look at any type of technique before I go into anything else. And then I start them off with doing something on 2 legs, typically body weight type of stuff, to see if they can perform that. And once they're able to perform that, we can maybe start loading them a little bit. And then we get into our single leg components. So again, don't jump somebody just into a single leg rear elevated squat if you don't know if they can perform a squat with 2 legs with good technique, good form first and foremost. But from a golfing standpoint, a lot of what's done is transferring that weight from your right side to left side, and you'll hear the term separating your lower body to your upper body, just getting your hips out of the way when you come through your swing. Again, you're transferring that force that you're creating from one side of your body to the other side. So a single leg component, single leg exercises are great in order to do that. Deadlift variations. I love trap bar deadlifts for a lot of athletes. They seem to adapt well to them as well. So the handles are to the side and the bar is not in front of them. Again, that's just my specific preference. Lunge variations, forward lunge, reverse lunges, or diagonal lunges and lateral lunges all go hand in hand with all those single leg type of variations. And step up variations as well. Front step up, crossover step up, lateral step ups are all great from a golfing standpoint. Depending on how you're going to utilize the seasons, which we'll talk a little bit about off season, in season, etc. for golf, what you could be prescribing and what exercises that you should be prescribing during that particular moment of time. That's going to be up to you as the person that's prescribing that. But again, there's a lot of different ways to do that and get good results. As long as you're getting positive adaptations, then you're on the right track. All right, let's go into our upper body. Obviously, we know the pictures here of Tiger Woods. Again, I think he is the one that should be responsible for creating that awareness from a golf standpoint of, hey, you could actually be doing resistance training, and these are the benefits that you're going to get out of it. Obviously, he's a very talented golfer. He just wasn't a person working out and all of a sudden he became a good golfer. I think the two went hand in hand. But as we know, golf is an extremely repetitive sport. And with that in mind, your body needs to be trained appropriately to be able to handle performing similar motions over and over again. And that's what the golf swing is. We're doing the same movement over and over again. So we want to have the stability in our upper body and our core, which we'll get to, and lower body for that matter. We want to have the mobility, but we also want to have the strength, because you're going to be producing really high forces in a short amount of time. So we have to have the strength in order to enable our body to perform that over and over again without injuring ourselves. A strong upper body can reduce overuse injuries. We'll discuss a little bit of the injuries here coming up that can occur and help generate and sustain more hitting power, making the ball go further. So if you guys follow golf, this person in the lower one here, Bryson DeChambeau, has been a big buzzword from a standpoint of creating a lot of power on the tour. He changed his body during the time that he had spent at home during COVID-19, when everybody was at home. And I think he put on roughly 40 pounds of muscle during that time. So he went from being a decent sized guy to now where you see him and he's, I think, roughly like 240 pounds, maybe. I could be off on that. But he's added a lot of mass, he's added a lot of strength, and he's crushing the ball. So it might go to a point where we've started with Tiger Woods and we're getting to a point now with Bryson where he's hitting the ball 375, 400 yards off the tee, which then makes his second shot that much shorter. If he is accurate at all, and if he's in the fairway or near the fairway, I guess this weekend will tell, because I'm sure he's just going to go crazy this weekend and trying to hit the ball far. And even if you're in the rough and you hit the ball further, you might only have a pitching wedge into a green, as opposed to another player might have a 7 or 8 iron. Could still make a big difference. So again, we might be changing the way that we approach things from a golf mindset. Before it was no weight training at all stretching, all mobility, to a point now some people years ago said, well, we can do some band work, but we're not going to lift any heavy weights. And now we're into that segment in the last 5 years where people are lifting pretty heavy. They're getting close to their absolute strength levels, their 1 RM. And now we're getting to a point, hey, we're adding a lot of mass and we're creating a lot of force with that. So I'm excited to see where we go with this from a standpoint, is this going to last? Are we going to have a lot of tour players coming up that are just trying to crush the ball to try to reduce that second shot, third shot into the green, and then have a good short game around the green? So I'm excited to see what happens with the game of golf, but know that that's the trend that we're going in. Upper body exercises, again, Keiser machines, all upper body pieces. Functional trainer, I like using the push-pull combination from all different angles. You'll see people do it from the high-low, where they're pulling up high, pushing down low, or it's from a standpoint, it's parallel to the ground, or you can go the opposite way. So you're hitting different angles with that push-pull. I like doing single arm cable rows, single arm cable pushes. Again, a lot of single arm type of stuff. I still did a lot of bilateral work, both arms or both legs at the same time. But once I was able to achieve that, I liked separating it to see where I was at, if I had a deficiency from one side to the next. Doing reverse flies and then kneeling single arm pull downs as well. But again, you can look up all these types of exercises online and check out some for yourself, as long as it makes sense for your program for that particular person. Again, not all these exercises are going to be beneficial for everybody. You might have somebody that has some type of limitation that you have to work on first before getting into something else. Or you might have somebody that has a shoulder problem, and are you going to sit them down on a bench press and do a straight arm bench press when they're having some type of AC joint pain? Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe you do some type of traditional examples would be push-up variations if they didn't have a problem with that, or you go right into doing some type of one-arm dumbbell chest press. Again, we still do lots of lat pull downs, bent over rows. We're able to maintain that spine level. And then getting into a little bit more of the golf specific, if you want to say it, I really don't necessarily like the term of sport specific types of exercises, because in my mind, you know, we're here as trainers and as strength coaches to make them better athletes. And once they become better athletes, they'll be better at their particular sport. But there are some instances where I might train one athlete different than another athlete. And this is one of the examples of maybe doing some extra wrist work or some shoulder work or some additional lower back or core stability type of stuff for a golfer, to try to limit those possible injury points that we have. And again, that holds true for a lot of different types of sports. Let's go ahead and talk about our core. Our strong core allows a golfer more stability. We discussed that during all the multiplanar movements. And it's paramount in transferring the power from the ground up through the body. So again, remember, we're getting that power from the ground, and we're making that move up through our body, through our core, and out through our limbs. A player's core must be strong for maintaining that proper body positioning. You'll hear, spine angle a lot, and maintaining a proper spine angle that's required during the golf swing. If you don't have a strong enough core, or if you don't have the correct mobility, your spine angle might change during the course of your swing. And again, that's going to cause a big discrepancy of where you want the ball to go. But again, we want to try to be able to maintain the strength. We want to be able to maintain the stability and mobility around joints. And that's going to help us further our athlete. And then let it be up to the golf specific coach to work on technique, form, the mechanics that go along with that. But again, if we can train somewhat similar to what the golf professional wants us to do, then the better off that will be. But know that we still want to be able to provide that force through the ground, up through the core, and out through our limbs. Corresponding exercises, Keiser machines, we have a low back and abdominal. Functional trainer, I love doing a pull-off holder press. So we talked about obviously doing a lot of rotational exercises, but remember, they're getting a lot of rotational work while they're on the course. So we want to be able to create that stability with a pull-off hold, maybe, where you're doing an anti-rotation exercise as well. So we can't forget that. That's a major importance. Same thing with our chops and our lifts. We're maintaining that stability, that strong core when we're doing things, utilizing the functional trainer. Traditional examples, I still love working planks, side planks, incorporating some medicine ball tosses or throws from angles from different positions, different angles, dead bugs, crossbody carries, and farmer's walks. And again, these can hold true for a lot of sports, but particularly the golfer where the spine angle is going to be, a major importance within the injuries. Speaking of injuries, common injury sites. Because golf is an extremely repetitive sport, players are prone to overuse injuries. So there's not a lot of times that's a acute type of injury. A lot of times it's a chronic, where it's an overuse type of issue. So accompanying that with the explosive nature of the swing, and can put a tremendous amount of stress on the body. So we see up here, we obviously know, if you follow golf, Tiger Woods had a lot of back issues during a certain time frame, and actually had his back fused a couple years ago. So he's still working through that. But you're going to see shoulder issues, rotator cuff tendonitis, knee issues, because we are putting a lot of torque on our lower body with our swings, elbow tendonitis, and then wrist problems. So any types of exercises that we can try to implement to help alleviate some of those common injury sites, the better off that we're going to be. And I think we covered a lot of those within that. Let's take a look at the basic training calendar for golf. And it's going to vary greatly depending on who you're working with, whether it's a high school, collegiate, professional, weekend warrior, etc. That's going to depend on how you train and how you set up your calendar. There's no true off season per se for golf, because there's tournaments that are held all year round. So even if you're in a collegiate setting, I think it's the spring is the most competitive. But during the summer, where even when they're not in session for school, that's when a lot of highly touted tournaments are happening. So those players are still playing a lot of golf throughout all year long. Now, if you're up from the north and the weather's bad, a lot of times people travel to the south. But if you are having some time where you know that there is going to be an off season, then that's when you can build your program around that. But know that your training calendar is going to have to be unique, and it must be flexible for that particular person. So let's take a look at, I've done these before, but let's take a look at the objectives for the off season. It's a phase during which the foundation is built for development. So if we do have a time that there is an off season for golf, the basic things that we're looking for is to acquire and improve that general physical preparation. So if they haven't done something before in the past, or if they took some time off, we want to get the body acclimated again. We want to do some physical preparation work. We want to improve the physical factors required for that sport, such as strength, power, speed, endurance, agility, and flexibility. And I say endurance here, but not from an aerobic standpoint. It's more for an anaerobic endurance standpoint. So it's being able to produce power in a repetitive time over and over again with consecutive swings. We want to be able to develop and or improve technique. That's not improving the technique of the golf swing. That's for the golf specific coach, but improving technique for specific lifts that you might be doing with that individual. And then familiarize yourselves with the basic tactics to be employed in the following phase, which is preseason. And preseason, if you have it, we could break our training calendar. And I would recommend, on a side note, if you have questions in regards to setting up a training calendar, tune in to my colleague, Ty Saban. He's been doing a great work the last 4 weeks of building a specific program for an individual and taking the whole year and breaking it down into mesocycles, microcycles, for example, and then breaking that down into what exercises that you should be choosing as well. So we have those recorded. If you have missed some, just reach out to me and I could send you those, but it gives you a good template of how to build an annual training calendar. But that's a side note. Back to our preseason, if we have that a lot of time, that's usually 6 to 7 weeks before they start a competitive type of competition. It's very specific and volume of training is high at the very beginning. And towards the end of the preseason, when we start diminishing that volume and we want to increase the intensity that which we're working with. And this phase links up with the various physical factors such as strength and speed, and applies them to the technical skills for that individual sport, which we're talking about golf. All right, so objectives for the in season. Now that we've gone through hopefully an off season, if they've had it, we've prepared the body physically, we're getting more into the in season. Intensity is going to be high while with the total volume of work is low. Remember, the volume that they're getting is out on the course itself. They're hitting hundreds and hundreds of golf balls. They're going through that swing so many different times. So we don't want to have to train them with a high volume in the weight room setting as well. We want to make sure that we're training at a high intensity. Our loads are a little bit higher, but our reps and volume is low. Training could consist of 2 times per week. Sometimes that changes depending on competitions, depending on if you're working with a coach that says, hey, well we're not going to do this. We're not going to allow this 2 times. But ideally, if you can get 2 times in during the end season, you're doing well for yourself. I typically use an undulating approach to satisfy the practice game and travel schedule. You couldn't really do a linear approach because things are changing constantly through the end season. The objectives of this phase, we want continuous improvement of our physical ability. So we want our strength levels to still be high. We want our power outputs to do the same. We want them to stay high. We're looking for the perfection of technique. I'm not going to introduce any new lifts necessarily during the end season that I have to teach from a standpoint of technique, because then I'm just opening up that can of worms of, am I potentially going to get this person hurt by doing this because I haven't actually even approached it during the off season or preseason. Featuring and developing tactics and gaining competitive experience. That's again, them out on the course. That mental attitude that they have in the weight room needs to carry over to the course itself. And we know that the game of golf is not only physical, but it's a highly mental sport as well. So anything that you can do from a standpoint of increasing their mental capacity, of being able to manage stress, manage overload, and be able to perform and get their heart rate to drop back down, to calm themselves down, the better off they're going to be. And then, of course, we want to maintain general physical preparation throughout the end season as well. Let's look at our postseason. After an extensive competitive period or tapering off or unloading period of 1 to 2 weeks should precede postseason play if possible. So maybe you have somebody that's gearing up season and this is like a postseason type of a play. If you could have some rest time in between there, you could taper them off so they're fully refreshed and energized, ready to go for that last tournament of the year, then we could implement this. Both volume and intensity are reduced during this period with the main focus on recovery. Again, we want to make sure the body's fully recovered, the mind is fully recovered so they can start fresh for that particular postseason play. And the objectives for the transition or recovery period. So season's over. We want to allow active rest and maintenance of our training gains. This period usually lasts anywhere between 4 weeks and not longer than 5 weeks. So we don't want to detrain necessarily. We want to make sure that we're still providing a little bit of stimulus, which we can break down into our first week, which is our detraining and evaluation period. So you might be doing some testing during that time to see if they were able to maintain those strength levels, power levels, speed levels throughout the course of their in season. And then we want to work into that second week where it's a rest period. And then the third and fourth week is made up of active rest. And remember, the training and exercise environment should be changed if possible. So we don't want the same type of training over and over and over again. So if you did a lot of work on the golf course, then let's take them out of that realm and take them somewhere else just to get that refresher. And remember, it's not total rest time. We want to make sure that we are doing something to maintain those levels during the active rest. I have a sheet, if you guys want to email me, it basically goes over a lot of the things that we covered today in regards to what lower body exercises, upper body, core, common injury sites. So if you want to give this to somebody that you're working with, or you want to have it for your own knowledge base, email me, I can send it to you. No problem. I know we covered a lot of information. That was right about 30 minutes or so. Let me go ahead. If you have any questions or things that you want answered, feel free to type them in the question and answer segment here. I'll stay on for a couple minutes. If you want to discuss any type of thing else with golf, fire away. But if not, if you guys are going to log off, I appreciate the time that you spent with me. Hopefully it was helpful for you. And again, don't hesitate to email me, which is macc@keiser.com. And then our training calendar here is keiser.com, education, training, etc. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, just let me know, and then I can reach out to you that way. Great information, appreciate it. Again, there's a lot of different ways that you can train particular people, but this is my realm of trying to teach you guys a simplistic way to attack things. All right, appreciate it, guys. Again, my email address is macc@keiser.com. Reach out to me if you have any questions, concerns. My next topic, I believe, is volleyball in a month from now. So if you guys want to discuss volleyball-specific training, or if you want any of my previous discussions in regards to soccer, baseball, I've done tennis, I have those on file. I can send those to you as well. Just let me know. Appreciate your time, and stay safe out there. Until next time.